So in one of my other videos, I took you through some of the supplies that I recommend for beginners to start if they're just starting to do linocuts or block prints. And now today I'm taking you through some of my more professional level tools that I use. And these are the tools that I really, really love using that have really improved my experience and the products or the art that I'm actually able to create while I'm doing my linocuts. So I'll just take you through a few of the items, just give you a quick overview of what they are, just so you have an idea of some of the tools you could use, tools and supplies you could use if you want to move to more of a professional level of linocut artist. So first thing, as with all lino or block prints, you need some sort of a block to carve onto. I have two versions here today. This one is the soft rubbery version, and I actually talked about this in the beginner's one as well. It's the NASCO Soft Cut. It's this thicker version that they have. It's really, really beautiful to cut into. It's not terribly expensive. It's quite hard to get. If you do have this available at an art store near you, I'd say whether you're a beginner or professional, I'd say use this if you want to carve into the soft rubber. And this is also the same block that I recommend for beginners as well, because this is the Speedball Traditional Unmounted Lino. This is something that you can get at a lot of different art stores and craft stores. It's firmer than the soft rubbery version. It's made of, I believe it's a mix of wood flour, so basically sawdust that's ground down into flour. I believe there's some linseed oil in there as well. But it creates a nice firm surface to carve out of. It's a bit trickier to carve out of depending on the temperature of the room than the rubbery version is, but it is really fantastic for detail. So either of these are absolutely fantastic for beginners or pros, but when I'm doing something, carving something that I'm planning on selling my prints of, I'm confident in using either of these. Okay, now let's move on to carving tools. So I have two different brands that I use now that I've upgraded beyond the Speedball little multi-tool that they sell. The first tools that I upgraded were to these Feel, P-F-E-I-L, I think is how it's spelled. These are absolutely fantastic. I bought a set. I can't remember exactly what the set was called. I just took a look at the different sets that I was able to get where I live and chose the ones that I thought were the most useful. I think came with about 5 in the set. So I have some U gouges, I have some V gouges. I have a few different sizes. They fit really nicely into the palm of your hand. They're called the palm tool, I think is what it's called. But you don't have to spend a whole lot of energy with your hand, like as a whole pushing. You just push like this. So they're nice, they're beautiful and easy to use. This is one that I bought. It wasn't part of a set. This one's fantastic for cleaning out really wide areas so you don't have those ridges that stick up and catch ink. So these, I recommend the Feel, I don't know how to say it. Any of those tools. I also upgraded to the Flex Cut carving tool brand of the Micro Palm set. This one's fantastic because this one right here is just the teeniest, tiniest, and it's fantastic for carving really, really small details. And then there's some other quite small tools as well. So between my Flex Cuts and my Feel tools, they are absolutely fantastic. I can carve all sorts of things. And if I want to get individual ones, I'll just take a look at the wood carving websites near that sell or in my area, and I'll just choose individual ones if there's anything else I want in the future. Now, one of the advantages of going to these type of more professional tools is you don't have to replace the actual carving end. You sharpen it. And I use the Flex Cut Slip Strop. This is to hone it. And so far, I haven't had any issues. I've been using this for 2-3 years, 4 years maybe, and haven't had any issues with any of my carving tools. They stay really sharp. I will hone them after every session, sometimes less often, but I try not to leave it go too long so that they stay nice and sharp. Okay, so that's a look at some of my carving tools. One piece, especially when you're moving into the more professional tools, they get really sharp. You can easily cut yourself. Even with the less professional tools, you're always at risk of accidentally hurting yourself when you're carving. So I use a bench hook. This one I really, really like. You can build one yourself, but I ordered this online. Essentially, it's just a piece where this end catches underneath. Oh, can you see it? This end catches underneath or up against the table, and you can put your block right here in the corner, and then you can carve this way. And this way, it's really easy to remember to keep your hand behind the blade, because you never want to carve towards your finger or your hand or yourself in any way. You always want to carve away. And it also makes carving easier because you can leverage the pressure of pushing against your block against this corner here. So not only is it a safety tool, but it just makes it so much easier to work. Now, one thing to remember, if you're building one yourself or you're buying one, I'm right-handed, so I want this side of the block on my left. But if you're buying one and you're left-handed, you want to make sure that either it's one that you can attach on both sides, so this one, I can move it to this side if I wanted, or if you're building it yourself, you just want to make sure to put so that you have the corner on this side. Okay. Now that's the carving stage. Those are all my kind of professional and professional level carving tools. So now let's talk about the actual printing stage. And there's all sorts of supplies and products that you can use. So let's start with inks. I use the Cranfield Caligo Safe Wash Relief inks. I love these. It's oil-based, but it's washable. So I can wash it with soap and water. So it's really fantastic. I was using them this morning, and I just, put some Dawn dish soap on my brayer and my where I'm rolling out my ink, and cleans right up. No problem. But it has really fantastic coverage. And generally, when you're going from a beginner level where you might be more likely to be using water-based inks, and you move up to a professional level where you might be using oil-based inks. Generally, oil-based inks tend to have better coverage. It's nice. Mixing colors can be a bit more reliable. Things like that. Just generally, it's fantastic. Downside, because it's oil-based, it takes quite a bit to dry. And certain colors, so red, tends to take forever to dry. I rarely do print with red. I have the odd thing that I do, but when I do print with those, you're waiting quite a while. But the blues and the blacks, not quite so bad, but you're still waiting several days. And sometimes I'll even let it sit for 2 weeks before I package up my prints. So that's my inks. Next, I'll just show you the paper that I use. This is BFK Reeves paper, BFK, and then Reeves is spelled R-I-V-E-S. I buy it in a large sheet. I believe it's 22 by 30, and I cut it down. So I'm able to get several 8 by 10 sheets. Most of what I print onto is 8 by 10, and then I have some of these 5 by 7s to do a few smaller prints. But if I want to print to a different size, I can just cut it to that size. So it prints really, really nicely. It's quite thick. It's I believe it's made by Arches, so the same company that makes the very popular watercolor paper. And I find this pretty easy to get at the art stores where I live in Canada. And I think I pay anywhere from, $11 a sheet or so. And I often get like a pack of 10 so that I have some when I'm doing a lot of printing. So that's the paper that I use right now. Now we have the Brayer. Now, I love this Brayer. It doesn't have a brand name on it. It didn't have a brand name on it when I bought it. It just came in a plain box. I bought it in London, England, and I live in Canada, so it just happened to be there. And I was like, this thing looks pretty great. And I picked it up. It's the only, I'd say, truly professional level Brayer that I have. It's soft. I really like the soft Brayers. And I still actually use my Speedball, the little Speedball ones that I showed in the beginner level video. And this one I absolutely love. It's really easy to use. It rolls ink really, really nicely. The one downside, so when you lay it down, it has a little rest right here so your handle doesn't fall. But there's no way to prevent the, like I don't like letting my Brayer just sit there on the table like that, especially when you're not printing, because it can leave a dent on the side. So I have to leave it sitting up in a mug when I'm not using it. And I'm not a huge fan of that. I feel like if you're doing a really good quality Brayer, you should think through how people are actually using them and storing them. But as long as you keep that in mind, this is a really fantastic Brayer. And then the last thing that I'm going to show you today, this is my Baron. It's a glass Baron. This is what you use after you, let's say this is a carving. You roll your ink onto the block, you put your paper onto the block, and then you use the Baron to basically hand press your print. I love this glass one because it's beautifully heavy. You can use all sorts of surfaces on it to press your paper. So you can use it flat just like this, and it's nice and heavy, so sometimes you don't need to put too much effort into what you're actually printing by hand. You can tilt it on its side if you want to have a bit more pressure, so now you have a bit more weight. Of course, you can put your weight into it as well. And if you really need to put like a spot of weight onto something, if you're just trying to get that ink to transfer, you know, when you're trying to press and there's just this one spot that just isn't quite good enough, so you really, really want to put pressure on, and you can do it that way. The other advantage is it's super easy to clean. I found with some of the craft store or cheaper ones, the plastic ones, you get a bit of ink onto it and it's stuck onto that plastic forever, and I've had issues where I transferred ink onto the back of the paper. This is super easy to clean. It's also really, really beautiful. It fits really nicely in your hand, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Downside is it's quite a bit more expensive than the plastic ones. And that's essentially it. That's a tour through a lot of my professional supplies. And if you're thinking of trying out a few different pieces, I encourage you. I don't know if there's one thing that I recommend to start with upgrading, probably the carving tools. They can be quite expensive. If I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I think a single tool is about $30 Canadian, I want to say, maybe a little less. The sets get quite expensive when you're buying several of them. Like you're looking at $100 and some Canadian. A lot of times having to order it in. So this is something that if there's one thing and you have the cash, it's worth doing. The other one I would recommend is maybe the inks. The inks aren't quite a bit more expensive than the water-based inks that you might be using, yet it does give you quite a jump in your print quality. So these are just my thoughts of some of the more professional tools, and just tools that make it easier for your lino print hobby.